got corporate South Africa operating within this global system right now. We've got our own local issues that come to bear, and that drawing attention to our own economic fundamentals. In this context, we had Nigeria's Reserve Bank Governor Lamido Sanusi recently stating that Africa must shake off its romantic view of China and start accepting Beijing as a competitor as much as a partner capable of the same exploitative practices as the old colonial powers. Speaking at the Hisense Technology Factory launch in Atlantis, Minister for Economic Development Ibrahim Patel, though, commented on South Africa's relations with China, emphasizing the need for industrialization. Let's take a look.
Our vision is long-term. We've got to be able to step up the structural rate of growth. And that means we've got to address things like the gaps in skills and the gaps in infrastructure. So a lot of our effort as government goes there. The swings in any quarter, we need to take note of it, but they're not a fundamental driver of our economic policy. The fundamental driver must be how to make the economy more competitive, more inclusive, and more job creating. So when we analyze what are some of the constraints to growth, infrastructure features very highly. The ability of companies to move goods from factory to port and sell it abroad, the ability of companies to plan on having a steady and reliable flow of energy, to have water, to have hospitals and schools for the workforce. Those are the kind of considerations that long-term investors look at. And so over the next decade and a half, we're stepping up the pace of infrastructure. By the time this administration concludes its mandate, in about April next year, over the 5 years of its mandate, we would have spent about 1 trillion rand on infrastructure. That is an enormous amount of money that we're investing in our economic future, in ensuring there's the physical basis for long-term growth.
In South Africa, there are a number of great programs on paper. We look at the National Development Plan along with many others, but there seems to be a disparity when it comes to implementing these programs. Minister, what do you believe is the issue here?
I think we've got two challenges that we've got to address. The one is the reality of a skills base that we need to rapidly improve to ensure that we have a capable cadre of civil servants, of people who can ensure that in fact the decisions of national authorities are implemented. It starts at a very basic level, that you need a teaching core that actually is at work teaching on time. But it goes beyond that. It means high-level skills in planning the infrastructure build program, supporting the industrialization efforts of the private sector. All of these are areas that we need to improve. But on the other hand, we have a perception challenge. We in fact do get many things right. When the new growth path was adopted in 2010, it envisaged a much greater capacity of the economy to create jobs. Since then, 600,000 new jobs have been created. On industry, it says, look south, look at expanding trade with the rest of the African continent. Today, Ford Ranger bakkies that are produced in Pretoria are sold not only in South Africa, but in more than 100 countries. 1 out of 5 Ranger bakkies, Ford Ranger bakkies, is sold elsewhere on the African continent. So these are success stories that we've got to bank whilst addressing some of the structural challenges to long-term growth.
Minister, we are here today at the Hisense factory launch, which is a Chinese corporation. Turning now towards Africa and China relations, and I'm going to quote the governor of the Nigerian Reserve Bank, who says that Africa must shake off its romantic view of China and accept Beijing as a competitor as much as a partner and capable of the same exploitative practices as the old colonial powers. That is quite a strong statement made by the Nigeria's Reserve Bank governor. What is your view looking at Africa and China's relations?
You know, there's an old saying that nations have no permanent friends, they have only permanent interests. And our interest right now is to industrialize the continent, to improve the living conditions of our people, and to increasingly trade more with each other, with other African countries. China represents a big opportunity for us, because on the one hand, it has enormous reserves of savings that can be reinvested on the African continent, and on the other hand, it's also a large market for goods. But we've got to get that relationship right. Ultimately, it is not China that will get the relationship right for Africa. It is Africa that must get that relationship right. Instead of us being a continent of consumers, buying televisions and fridges from elsewhere, we have to produce them. We have to produce them here, we have to sell them to each other. And today's factory represents that strategic shift in how we conceive of our relationship with China. In 2010, President Zuma led a team of cabinet ministers to Beijing to sign the Beijing Declaration, which is a comprehensive strategic partnership between South Africa and China. And in that document, we recognized the unbalanced nature of our trade. Yes, trade was growing very, very significantly, but we were selling raw materials and China was selling finished goods. And the Beijing Declaration committed to a more balanced trade profile, including development of value-added manufacturing products. Now it's up to us to roll up our sleeves, to get our industrial development corporation, whatever the equivalent may be, out there, attract foreign investors, bring in local know-how, facilitate the investment, create a climate in which companies can see the capacity to have a decent return, in which workers can see a future for themselves in the success of that company. That's what we're doing. So Africa's challenge is not to cut itself off. And yes, we must not be romantic about any of our relationships, but they are opportunities as much as they are threats. Yes, China, the United States, Japan, Germany, the United Kingdom, India, they are competitors, but they are also potential markets for our goods. They're also potential sources of investment. So it's the ability to see the opportunity and with focus and a great deal of discipline to apply ourselves to that opportunity. That's what makes a successful nation. That's what makes a winning economy.